Hi, Mr. Wonderful here, and welcome to another episode of Ask Mr. Wonderful. Now, you know what I love to do time to time is to invite a guest onto the show to help me answer all of your questions, and I'm always amazed by how many questions we get and where we get them from all around the world. Let me tell you about this special guest for this week. I think you're really going to enjoy her. Maria Sharapova. She won Wimbledon when she was 17. She's renowned all around the world as a tennis star, really. To win Wimbledon at that age obviously sets you apart from your peers, and it's a remarkable time to become world famous. But there's many, many athletes out there that have achieved great things, and I respect all of them. And they do deals, they endorse products and services, but very, very few ever become operators in business. They use their name to help products, but to actually operate a business, that's really hard to do. Now, I met Maria on the set of Shark Tank. She came on as a guest, and I was really impressed. I mean, I cut the guest sharks a lot of slack, but once we get going into deals, they're just another competitor. She was sharp. She was very sharp. I learned later that she's actually a CEO. I thought that she'd endorsed a sugar company or a confectionery company called Sharapova. She just lent her name to it. No. She's the CEO, she's the operator. She deals with, it takes up 70% of her day, and that is really hard to do. So that's when I said, okay, this is different. This is not the typical athlete. This is someone who made the transition to entrepreneurship and then into business leadership and all the trials and tribulations associated with running a company. It's hard to do. It's hard on a good day to do it, and let alone all the challenges retail's having today, and et cetera. So it's wonderful to bring her onto the show. I think you're going to really enjoy her insights, her Shark Tank experience, and of course, answering your questions. All right, let's go. Here we go with Maria.
Hello.
Hello.
Maria, how are you? I'm just setting up the cameras. I'll be in front of there in 1 second.
Okay.
Where are you?
In LA.
In LA?
Where are you?
I'm in Miami.
Okay.
It's a ghost town here.
Oh, same here.
I'm not surprised. What a mess.
What, do you go on walks, or what's your daily routine?
I've been pretty freaked out, so I haven't done anything yet, but today I just took delivery of a bicycle.
Right.
And I'm going to take a cruise because I'm really getting out of my mind. I've been here for 10 days now.
Right.
And I'm doing all the television stuff remotely, mostly with Zoom. Networks are using Zoom now. I think Damon and I are doing in Morning America. Hey, you got to turn your camera on.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, you got the background and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, fully prepared.
Hey, listen, you gotta jazz it up a little bit.
You really do.
Yeah, well, yours looks sort of nouveau, kind of architectural,
Yep.
Looks good.
Story of my home.
Yeah.
Maria,
Right.
so glad to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. I have to ask you, I've got questions from all around the world, which I want you to answer. We're going to get to those, but there's a few things I want to ask you about right now. Your Shark Tank experience. I mean, first of all, what got you into business? Because, come on, you're a professional athlete. Very few of them are successful in business. Yeah, there's a few, but not many. They never get the training because their youth is spent, learning their craft as an athlete. When did you make that transition?
So I think as an athlete, I was always very scared of being one-dimensional because from a very young age, what I did was very one-dimensional. So my craft was very singular. I always had horse blinders on. It was just one way, right? I would wake up, I would train for hours, and I would already be thinking about the next day and the next tournament. And although that was my path, and I loved that, I loved competing, I was always aware of the fact that tennis wasn't just a sport, that it was a business. And little by little, as I started working with blue chip brands, whether it was Nike or a Tag Heuer or an Evian, I started learning like the education process. At first I was part of advertisements, then I started working on the creative, then it was the marketing. And as I was going through these paths, meeting different people, I realized that I wanted a little bit more decision making. I didn't just want to be like a face of something or a brand using my name. So
what age were you
wanted
when
the pressure.
when those big contracts were coming in? What age were you?
I was a teenager.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so I won Wimbledon when I was 17, and that's when I knew that tennis, I had this theory that it was more than just a sport, but after that I realized that there was a lot of business involved.
So once you win Wimbledon, that is brand right there for the rest of your life, because 0% of the population, 0.00001 ever get near that, and there you win it at 17. Remarkable. Brands start approaching you saying, look, you know, start endorsing us. Your agent obviously is working those deals for you. The world didn't really know you till then. They didn't know what your personality was. They didn't know if you were nuts, if you were crazy.
Well, the first thing I'd say is my family moved to the United States from Russia with $700. So at that point, when contracts were coming in and I was being paid to be the face of a brand, it was very exciting, right? It gave us a financial freedom to travel around the world, not be dependent on that money, maybe from a sponsorship or from an IMG, which was managing me and has been from that time. It really gave us like just a little bit more freedom. As I started accumulating those years of being, you know, top 5 in the world, it certainly brought me the financial security. And from that point on, deal making and the strategy behind deal making became very different, because instead of just being a face, I actually had an opportunity to be an investor. And that's when I really started understanding business, you know, what a VC is, you know, who's Mr. Wonderful, who's putting in that money. And I actually grew up watching Shark Tank because my business mind started rolling, and part of my education was while I was on the road and getting treatments and massage at the end of practice or a match, I'd be on my computer watching those shows in the background. So my mind was always turning.
A lot of people want to be on Shark Tank, but you know, to be frank with you, the producers want investors. They want people that understand the process of evaluating a deal, valuations, structure, all that stuff, which is why most athletes don't get on Shark Tank. Somewhere along the way, you convinced them that you really were an investor. And I must be honest with you, and I don't say this all the time, you were pretty good on Shark Tank. You were impressive because you weren't, and I wanted to ask you about that experience because you actually said no to people. And most guests don't have the guts or the kahunas to do that. They want to be nice to everybody, but you were really not so nice, which I really liked.
I learned that from you. Let's
So
be honest.
talk to me about the experience. All the questions I have, half of them are, ask her what it was like to be on Shark Tank. Tell us about the process. What happens? Because we don't know in Sharks how they bring you in. You just show up one day and then we shake your hand.
Well, it starts a long way out. I think before we shot the episode, I went into a meeting with the producers and the editors and Sony's and basically was interviewed for the job almost.
They were trying to figure out if you had the chops, right? If you understood what
right,
you were
if
doing.
I understood, yeah. And I think it was everyone that's on the show, you have to have a feeling that not only do you like love the show, but you're part of the show. And so it's more like, do you even know what the show is about? Because I can imagine that maybe some don't. And I knew the ins and outs, so I knew I was okay on that. I was slightly worried on some of like the technical business terms, but I surprised myself on the show. Like in the show, I felt like I knew most of it. What I loved about the show is how real it felt. I think we had 8 pitches that day, and at the end of the day, it was like cut, and I was like, wait, I want more. Let's keep going.
But I want to let you in on a little secret, Maria, just so you know this. After the niceties are over, when you come in and you take your seat, about 5 minutes later, we don't give a shit about you anymore.
Oh, so, I recognize that right off the bat.
And you have to fend for yourself.
Very fast.
That's all right. I think it makes it real because it is. And I think it's important for the person that's trying to sell their deal that they understand you're engaged, which you were.
I wanted to ask you back to your professional career. You recently retired from tennis. And I've got a plethora of questions. And basically the theme of them is this. When do you know it's your time to bow out? How do you know? If your whole life has been, won Wimbledon, have been a professional, known globally, your brand is known all around the world, It must be a bitch to make that call.
It really is, and it was one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make, and for a few reasons. One, because a huge part of me, all of me, like still loves the sport and loves playing, and it was really my escape. And no matter what was happening in my life, whether it was good, it was bad, it was medium, I would go on the court, and all those thoughts would disappear. I wouldn't think about anything but being in the present, right? Because if I wasn't in the present, I wouldn't perform well, I wouldn't feel good. But it was time for my body. And I think my body made that decision. The last couple of years was a real struggle for my shoulder. And getting to a tournament and stepping out on the court felt like a victory. And I've been doing this for way too long to feel like that was a victory. I wanted the victory to be holding trophies. And that's always been my competitive edge. And that's when the body was like, this is it's almost not fun, right? Because you train and you work and you love the work and effort. You're putting that in to go and get through the quarters and the finals and work your way through your body and your mind. And I wasn't able to do that anymore.
Today, if you're moving up, you've got that fan base. You're building a brand, you're creating value. It's got a dark side, but it also has a huge benefit, doesn't it?
I prefer building a brand by being a champion. So if anyone gives me that choice, I prefer the results and doing the work and not talking about the work to be your pillar. And now you have both options, which I think is beneficial. And building a brand is a very, in today's world and society, it can mean so many things. It can mean something that's slightly phony, unless you make it really authentic. But the true value of an athlete and the core is very much result oriented, because that is sport, right? It's emotional and it's entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's win or lose. And in tennis, because it's so individual, there's a match point, there's that end, there's so much more to it. And the feeling of winning is unlike anything that you can experience in another profession, which is the beauty of it.
All right, let's go to some questions. I've got questions from all around the world. They're interested in your insights. Let's go to the first one here. This is Katie. Listen to Katie. I'm sure you can hear her.
So, because all roads lead back to Mr. Wonderful, if you can't tell, I watch Shark Tank a lot. I wanted to ask you about how to help smaller businesses. My husband and I came up with a proposal, but because we aren't in business yet, we were hoping you could offer us some words of wisdom. I keep hearing stories every day about businesses that are closing their doors because they don't have the cash reserves to handle a crisis of this magnitude. And even if we get stimulus checks, it won't help businesses as people avoid public places like bookstores and restaurants. For the businesses that are able to get loans, I wonder if that will be enough to carry them through, especially because I don't believe that spending is going to skyrocket once life goes back to normal, relatively speaking. In America, consumer spending accounted for roughly 68% of the GDP last year, and I think it's safe to say that that's not going to happen this year, and the GDP will shrink. Do you have any thoughts as to how we can try to help businesses on a larger scale other than buying gift cards?
Maria, there's a bunch of questions in there, but this is really this is a very intuitive series of questions, because obviously there's an entrepreneur in Katie somewhere, but she's really scared of this current environment. Let's start with the back end, where she said, do you think it'll be the same ever again for retail, for consumers' buying behaviors? What do you think is going to happen with this whole virus thing?
So what we've done the last couple of weeks, and I think we'll hopefully be doing in the next few, unless we're in full quarantine, is we cook a meal or two at home, breakfast and dinner, but lunch we pick up. So all the restaurants that are in our community that we've ate at for years with my family and my friends, we pick up, and that's how I've been trying to support them. I live by the beach. I'm driving up Pacific Coast Highway. I've been going to Felix a couple times a week. It's one of my favorite restaurants. The chef, he's there 7 days a week right now doing pickup and takeaway. So I've been trying to support as much as I can. There's a local coffee shop that I'm getting gift certificates for. So I'm trying to play my part, but I'm utilizing this time to to really spend with my family.
Let's get a question here from Steve. Listen to this one.
Hey, Mr. Wonderful. Thanks for taking the time to take my question. I moved from Ireland 10 years ago and set up a tea company 6 years ago. The first few years were very tough and they challenged me. However, I feel like I'm in a bit of limbo now. My sales are between 200 and 300,000 a year with a net margin of about 70%. However, I just don't feel challenged as much anymore. I have about 500,000 in cash in the bank in the business, and I happily live off the modest paycheck that I pay myself. So everything runs quite easily. I'm a one-man band, and I don't have to put a lot of time into the business anymore. So things are good, but they're not great. I just don't know what to do next. I do put all free cash back. Do I put all my free cash back into the business, or do I start something else? I know I don't have enough to fully retire or relax to be secure about my future, but it seems like the business has just found its place and runs as is. What's your advice on my next move? Also, after reading your book, I'm wondering if you ever made it to Ireland. Thanks.
Maria, here's a guy on his own, obviously did a direct-to-consumer business, has $500,000 in the bank, and he's bored.
First thing, you need a shift in the attitude. Just by listening to that voice note, I feel like there's no spark, there's no energy, you're not proud of what you're creating, you're not excited about what you're doing. In order to make something great, you need the steps toward greatness, and that starts with the attitude that you have. So no matter what you're doing, no matter how much money it's getting you, you got to love it, right? There's going to be the ups and downs, and you're going to go through all the challenges, and you're not going to love it all the time, but you have to be excited about building something. You agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm quite amazed because, you know, all the hard work is done. He's created a business. It's generating a living. He's got $500,000 in retained earnings. Like, there are 1 million people that would die for that opportunity that never get that success. I totally agree with you. He's got to really look himself in the mirror and say, I've got to motivate myself or do something else. I mean, he could do something else. Obviously, he's successful. I'll answer the last part of his question. Yes, Steve, I got to Ireland to visit my father's grave in Malahide. And what an experience that was. There's not a lot of room for anybody to be buried in Ireland anymore. So it was a really small gravesite, but it was wonderful to go back to the homeland. But thanks for that question.
Well, 70% margin isn't bad either, right?
I mean, it's phenomenal. I'm licking my chops thinking to myself, maybe I should buy the business off him. It's ridiculous.
You're already more excited than he is.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. All right, we have another one here. This is from Alex. Let's hear Alex. Here we go.
People often say that if they just had more money, they would work less. And yet, I've noticed that a lot of extremely wealthy people work many, many, many hours. Sometimes even more hours than they did before they became rich. Why is that?
If there was ever a question for you, Maria, this is it. I mean, what would motivate you after you're filthy rich to work?
Loving what I did, like having the passion and being curious to know how much more, to which level I could take it to. How much better could I get? Is that it? Is there more in me?
I tried retiring. I retired for 3 years, and I visited every beach on earth. I decided that was my mandate. I wanted to try it. The ones in Vietnam, the ones in Cambodia, all these beautiful places. And I was bored shitless. I just couldn't believe how boring that is and how meaningless and listless you become. I just want to be in the game. I just want to compete. I mean, I don't need more money. I want to keep what I have, obviously, but I like to compete. And it's a full circle back to Shark Tank. I see myself in those people on the carpet, as I'm sure you see some of, when you were watching them, they remind you of earlier years when you had that hunger and you didn't have anything yet, and you want to help them sometimes if the valuation's right, you know. But it's kind of like, it's a great question to end on, because that is the motivation of life. It's the pursuit of something that gives you meaning. And for you got to answer this now. Tennis is over. What's going to be the new Maria? What are you going to do for the next 10 years? What's the game plan for you?
Well, I've been running a candy company for 6-7 years now. So I'm now
Sharapova, we all know it, sure.
Sharapova, right. So I'm in the day-to-day of it. I'm in the daily decisions. I'm on conference calls for the last 2 weeks, 6 to 8 hours a day with teams, with manufacturers, retailers that are some of the ones that are going through the tough challenges right now. So I'm in it. I'm the CEO and running the entire business. So that takes a majority of my time. I love architecture, actually. So that's a passion of mine. And I'm breaking ground on a really cool health and wellness project in a few months. So there's a few things that I'm certainly passionate about, but very business oriented.
So Sharapova, 60% of your day, would you say?
70 probably.
Wow. Then let's drill into that just a little bit before we go. Retail. Retail. I mean, I just had 22 of my companies on a Zoom yesterday talking about the complete collapse of retail revenue. Sharapova, you have a lot of sales in retail.
Right.
What are you going to do? What's the game plan?
Well, because candy and sweets and snacks is very much probably like an 86% impulse purchase. So we're reliant on someone going to the stores for their rice or for something else and picking up the packaging on their way out or at checkout. So that's how our category works.
That's not good news, Maria. That's not good news.
That's not good news. We haven't seen a drop in sales in the last month, which is a good sign, but who knows what's going to happen.
Wait a minute, retailers are closed. They're closed now. They're zero. No traffic.
Well, 70% of the ones that we're at are still open, right? So some of the grocery stores.
Oh, you're in the channels where they're necessity, the food channels.
Right, the food channels. Right.
How are you ever lucky?
Right. So the one that's taken a huge hit is Hudson News, which is an airport store. We're in over 500 stores across the nation. So that's taken a huge hit. That's one of our largest accounts. So I'd say if someone is in that position, such as I am, it goes back to there's nothing you can do right now, right? There's nothing. What you can do is make it personal because we're all in this together. You call up the people that are working there. You understand their problems. You figure out how you can help. Just this week, we did a little social media campaign called A Little Act of Kindness. We sent 100 boxes to so a friend could nominate their parents or their other friends or doctors or nurses that are on the front lines of all of this. So we just sent out 100 free packages to hospitals all around the country. So it's doing little things like this. Yes, we're losing a huge account at the moment, but we'll get that back. People are going to travel again. I have full confidence in that. We have to make sure we have the right inventory at the right time and working with all these retailers on a much personal level because as we all know, this is a time that we're all in this together.
Maria, thank you so much for your time today. Incredible insights. What a transition. Athlete to CEO. I mean, look, I don't get impressed very often, but I'm impressed. Thanks for your time. It was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. We'll see you on Shark Tank.
Yes. I'm hoping we'll see you there. That's terrific. Take care.
Bye. What did you think of the episode?
Well, you know that your episode was up 40% year over year. Yeah, it's pretty interesting what's going on. Shark Tank's the #1 show in America on Fridays now. So let me just start recording this.
Okay.
Oh, it is recording. Okay, good. We're all set then. All right. Take my glasses off. Everything seems to be working.
So far, so good.
Yeah, it's a checklist. I got all the shit that has to be on, and I think one last thing. My head's cut off. Hold on, we're gonna adjust it. I want to see that bald head. It's the brand.